One word, spoken at a political rally, and suddenly there's a firestorm, debates, condemnation, a lot of explaining. For some, it's just a synonym for a loan shark. For millions of others, it's an echo of centuries of persecution. This isn't just another political controversy. This is the hidden history of a 400-year-old word, a story that begins on a stage in Elizabethan England and lands in the middle of today's political battles. How did a character from a Shakespeare play become one of the most loaded anti-Semitic slurs in the English language? And why does it matter so much when a major political figure uses it now? Let's go back to around 1600 to William Shakespeare and his play, The Merchant of Venice. A lot of people think the merchant in the title is Shylock, the Jewish moneylender. Actually, it's Antonio, the Christian merchant and the play's supposed hero. Here's the basic plot. Antonio's friend Visanio needs money to woo a wealthy heiress. Antonio's cash is tied up in shipping, so he goes to Shylock for a loan. This is a man he's insulted and spat on for being Jewish and for lending money with interest, a practice called usury, which was highly controversial at the time. Shylock agrees to the loan, but with a horrifying twist. If Antonio can't pay it back, Shylock gets a pound of flesh. That gruesome detail defined the character for centuries. You have to understand Shakespeare's world. Jews had been expelled from England since 1290. For nearly 300 years, there was no official Jewish community. Shakespeare wasn't writing from real life. He was drawing on old, deeply ingrained anti-Semitic stereotypes, Jews as greedy, vengeful outsiders. Shylock was created as a villain the audience expected. Even though he has moments of humanity, think of his "hath not a Jew eyes" speech, his main role is to be the bad guy. In the end, he's defeated, loses his fortune, and is forced to convert to Christianity. For centuries, Shylock was a staple on stage. How he was played reflected the times. Sometimes he was a monstrous caricature, grotesque for laughs. In the 1800s, some actors tried to make him more tragic and sympathetic, a man broken by hatred. But while the character evolved on stage, his name took on a new life in the real world. Shylock became a common noun, a dark transformation. By the late 1700s, it was in the dictionary as a term for a ruthless creditor, a loan shark. The name became a weapon. It wasn't just about a character anymore. It was a way to summon a stereotype. Calling someone a Shylock dragged in all the baggage, greed, cruelty, the demand for a pound of flesh. And because the character is explicitly Jewish, the word almost always carried anti-Semitic undertones, tying the idea of predatory lending to Jewish people. It became a self-contained insult, wrapping up religious prejudice and financial resentment in a single word. If the word was created in the 17th century and sharpened in the 18th and 19th, it was weaponized in the 20th. As modern, racial anti-Semitism grew in Europe, Shylock became a valuable figure for propagandists, especially in Nazi Germany. Joseph Goebbels' Ministry of Propaganda saw The Merchant of Venice as a tool. They didn't just stage the play, they twisted it for their ideology. Nazi-approved productions cut sympathetic lines like, "Hath not a Jew eyes?" to make Shylock pure villain. In one infamous 1943 Vienna production, Shylock was a grotesque caricature, grunting and squealing. The play was even broadcast on German radio after Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. This was the horrific peak. Shylock was no longer just a character or a slur. He became justification for persecution and genocide. The Nazis used Shakespeare to prove that Jews were inherently evil, fueling a modern campaign of extermination. This history is burned into the word. You can't just wash it away. That's why groups like the Anti-Defamation League have, for decades, called Shylock a dangerous, offensive anti-Semitic slur. Which brings us to today. At a rally in Iowa, talking about tax policy, Donald Trump said, "No going to the banks and borrowing from, in some cases, a fine banker, and in some cases, Shylocks and bad people." Jewish advocacy groups responded immediately. The ADL called it a centuries-old anti-Semitic trope about Jews and greed that is extremely offensive and dangerous. They said President Trump's use of the term is very troubling and irresponsible. Words from our leaders matter. The head of the Jewish Council for Public Affairs said, "This is not an accident." It follows years in which Trump has normalized anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theories, and it's deeply dangerous. When asked, Trump said he didn't know the word was offensive. To me, Shylock is somebody that's a moneylender at high rates. I've never heard it that way. You view it differently than me. I've never heard that. He's not the first public figure to make this mistake. In 2014, Joe Biden used the term to describe predatory lenders targeting military members. After the ADL pointed out its anti-Semitic history, Biden apologized, calling it a poor choice of words. Every time this happens, the debate reignites. Is it real ignorance or a deliberate dog whistle, a coded message for a select group? Critics say that with such a well-documented history, claiming ignorance isn't good enough for a public figure. Using language like this, even unintentionally, normalizes harmful stereotypes and gives legitimacy to ideas that have fueled hatred for centuries. The journey of the word Shylock is powerful and unsettling. From a complex character on a London stage, to a common noun, to Nazi propaganda, to a political flashpoint in modern America. It's a 400-year history showing how language gets layered with meaning, memory, and pain. Words carry the ghosts of their past. And understanding that past isn't just for academics, it's essential for communicating responsibly and respectfully in today's world. What do you think? Can a word like Shylock ever lose its history, or is it forever defined by its darkest moments? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this valuable, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the words that shape our world.